Hello children. Suppose you go inside a completely dark room. Are you able to see any objects in the room? But when you light a candle or a torch, you can see the objects. Light helps us see objects. Let's know how can we see objects when light is present by learning about light, types of objects, and shadows from the lesson Light, Shadows and Reflection, Class 6 Science. Learning outcomes. At the end of this session, you will be able to understand about how can we see objects. Luminous objects. Types of objects. Shadows. Can we guess the object by observing its shadow? Color of the shadow. Shape of the shadow. Keywords. Light. Luminous objects. Objects which emit light on their own. Transparent objects. The objects that allow all light rays to travel through them. Translucent objects. The objects that allow some light rays but not all to travel through them. Opaque objects. The objects that do not allow any light rays to travel through them. Shadow. An area of darkness formed by an opaque object obstructing light. Before starting, let us look at the concept map of this session. Let's do an activity to understand how can we see objects. Make your room dark by shutting the doors and windows. Put on the light. When we put on the bulb, light falls on the object, bounces from the object and reaches us. We can see an object only when light falls on it and bounces back to our eyes. We know that light helps us see objects. A substance that gives light is known as a light source. The sun, a glowing bulb, lighted candle, etc. are some sources of light. Objects like the sun that give out or emit light of their own are called luminous objects. Let's do an activity to learn about the different types of objects. Collect some objects like paper, wood, iron, glass, polythene cover, oily paper, etc. Try to look at something far away through each of these objects. We observe that things can be seen clearly through glass. Things can be seen but not clearly through polythene cover and oily paper. And things cannot be seen through paper, wood, and iron. If we cannot see through an object, it does not allow light to pass through it. Such objects are known as opaque objects. If we can see clearly through an object, it is allowing light to pass through it. Such objects are known as transparent objects. If we can see, but not very clearly, it partially allows the light to pass through them. Such objects are known as translucent objects. You might have seen your shadow many times. It is common to see shadows during the daytime. Can shadows be formed at night? It is also possible to get shadows at night in our house when the electric bulb is on. It seems that we need a light source to get any object's shadow. The shadows are formed for objects that do not allow light to pass through them, opaque objects. Are sources of light and an opaque object enough to get shadows? Do we need something more? Let's do an activity to find out. Do this activity in a dark room with a torch and a book. Put the torch under the book at a distance of about 30 centimeters. We find the shadow of the book on the room's ceiling. Do the same activity in the open air, outside at night. We do not see any shadow in the open air when the torch is under the book. Now, place a drawing sheet at a distance of 1 meter above the book and try to find the shadow of the book. Now the shadow is formed on the drawing sheet. We do not find the shadow of the book if we move the sheet. From the activity, we understand that only light and opaque objects are not enough to form the shadow of an object. In addition to these, we need a screen. Can we guess the object by observing its shadow? Shadows give us some information about the objects. Sometimes, shadows can also mislead us about the object. Observe the shadows shown on the screen and guess the names of the objects that form the shadows. Now, see the objects that actually formed the shadows. You must have wondered when you compared your guesses and the actual objects from which shadows are formed. You may notice that the shadows that look like birds and animals are actually formed by hands. Does the shadow have any color? Let's find out. Take balls of different colors and look at their shadows. Do the shadows look different in color when the colors of the ball are different? Shadow is an area when light is absent. Hence, the shadow is colorless irrespective of the color of the object. Now, let's learn about the shape of the shadow. Observe the shadows of a pen, duster, ball, round plate, etc. in sunlight. Rotate the objects to change their positions and observe the changes in the shadows. We observe that the ball and the plate appear round in shape. When we hold the pen vertically, the shadow seems like the object. When we turn the pen horizontally, the shadow becomes round. By rotating the duster in different positions, shape of the shadow changes to square, rectangle, etc. We get different shapes of shadows for a single object by changing its position because of the straight line path followed by light rays. Points to remember. We need light to see objects. Objects like the sun that give out or emit light of their own are called luminous objects. Opaque objects do not allow light to pass through them. Transparent objects allow light to pass through them and we can see through these objects clearly. Translucent objects allow light to pass through them partially. Shadows are formed when an opaque object comes in the path of light. In addition to light and object, we also need a screen to obtain the shadow of an opaque object. The color of objects cannot be determined by looking at their shadows. Thank you for watching.